Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to try and project my voice this evening because we was promised microphones, but we can't find them, I'm afraid. So please bear with us. I will try to reach those at the back of the hall. Thank you all for coming to this, our fourth of the public meetings to discuss the Dunton Garden Suburb joint consultation between Basildon and Brentwood. Full agenda tonight, as you can see. We have a very good lineup of politicians and candidates. We've got people here from the county, from Brentwood Council and Basildon, from all colours of the political spectrum. They all will be given 5 minutes this evening each, because we have got a full agenda. And then after that, there will be questions from the floor. I'm sure you've all come prepared with lots of good questions. And we've also had questions from the over the web, which members of our Facebook group have been firing into me. I've got a section of them behind me there to put to the people here. As I say, my name's Derek Fellows. My fellow committee man here is Philip Gibbs. He's our press officer. Philip does lots of research, and he's got a great presentation this evening, which it's just worth coming for that. A little bit on admin, fire exits. Should there be a fire bell, please, there's steep steps there. Please leave in a calm manner. We don't want any injuries, people trying to escape, or at the end of the meeting tonight at 10 o'clock, please just take it easy, no injuries. I'm not used to Philip's. Right, I'll go through the agenda now. So, this is Philip's laptop. We've had a few technical issues. Right. Okay, a few things on admin. James Hornsby School will have this hall hire tonight, all the excellent facilities, very good price, but we have to pay for it. If anyone would like to make a contribution this evening, they will be gratefully received. Because the hall hire has come out of our fighting fund, and we need to keep that in the black. Should mention one of our other committee members who can't make it this evening, Zoe, who her husband hasn't been able to get back from Edinburgh, and she's got to stay at home looking after the children. So all our money goes to Zoe. She's in the process of setting up a bank account with NatWest, and we will put all takings up on the web, so we're fully auditable. We've had support from all over on this campaign. One of the people who have supported us is the Freehan Manor Hotel. They put us in touch with a very good printer. They produced some very good pamphlets, A3 and A4 size. Save the green belt for our children and no Dunton suburb. A3, A4, you're welcome to take them, please. Put it in your windows. It spreads a message. It shows these people when they start campaigning in a few weeks' time. Power of this group, which is now 1,740 odd members. It's grown in 6 weeks, and that's the strength of the feeling in our communities. Excuse me. I also have to drink quite a lot of water when I give speeches. It's very warm here. Anyway, posters. Also, on our Facebook page, there was great amount of traffic about having car stickers, and we thought that's been taken up very widely. It's been disappointing. We had to pay from out of our fighting funds. You're welcome to them. They're here at the front. Again, it puts the message across, and if you'd like to make a contribution towards those, it would help to replenish our fighting fund. If there's anyone who does not know how to raise an objection yet on Basildon Council, we do have some pamphlets here. The cut-off date has been extended until March the 16th at 5 p.m. You can either email in, write in, or use the council's web portal. You have to clearly state, I object to this proposal. So don't put something in, it may be taken as a refusal. finally, we've had fantastic support from Essex Wildlife Fund. And part of Philip's presentation, because the Conservation Officer, Dr. Annie Gordon, couldn't make it this evening, she's given us her presentation, and Philip has incorporated that into his presentation. Excellent work from Essex Wildlife Fund. They put a very strong, very detailed objection in, which by itself I think should stop this proposal in its tracks. But anyway, I'd like to reciprocate that support. My wife and I have joined Essex Wildlife Trust. Some of the people who've been very active with our members going across to the site and finding, it's amazing, finding things like, you and I might take a bit of rubbish, and they pounce it and say, no, that's not rubbish, that's a barn owl pellet. Barn owls are a protected species. And from that pellet, they can then detect what the animals had eaten. And there could be protected species regurgitated in those pellets. What might look like a little mark in the ground. They say, no, that's actually deer tracks or whatever. So they've been very supportive, and as I say, I'd like us to be, reciprocate that. The membership forms there, I spoke to a very helpful young lady the other day on the telephone. She made it so easy to take my money, but it's a pleasure in giving it to her. Just mentioned Dunton Garden Suburb. They know where they get their leads from. And as I say, well worth supporting them. That's all the part on admin. The next person, I can't see him, that's worrying. Is Danny Lovey here? Danny, hi, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Would you like to?
Yeah. Where would you like me to?
Wherever you feel comfortable, my friend. Come down the front, stand on the stage. I always introduce Danny at our public meetings by saying he's probably got more in-depth and breadth of knowledge of all things to do with Basel planning, and we've been on various campaigns beyond the years, sometimes on the same side, sometimes not, but that's all history. Danny's here now to talk about various planning issues that we're facing. Many of us don't know about it. And we Philip and I, and Danny and somebody else, we have a meeting tomorrow, arranged through Stephen Metcalfe, our MP, and we're meeting Basel Council Planning and the leader of the council, because what we want to do, we want to get ahead of the game. This one snuck out of the council, and I complained to the council officers that it was very devious that they didn't broadcast this. And I was talking to the lady, she said to me, Mr. Fellows, we don't find that leafleting the area is very effective or efficient. And I kid you not, as God's my witness, as we was having that conversation, there was a letter that dropped from Basildon Council. And it was something important that registering to vote, confirming the voters. So that story didn't rub me when the lady said that. So we want to be ahead of the game. We want to know what developments are coming along, how our communities are going to be impacted. And when I say communities, in a short time that we've been going with this group, we've reached out to Billericay Action Group. Part of that, we're in a wider alliance from R.A.I.D. Philip, can you help me here? The various Castle Point, and all other peoples who are facing planning issues. And one of them, I mean, we're sharing information and education. One of them managed to challenge a planning application. That's Castle Point, was it? Yeah. So we've also reached out. See people here from West Horndon. We've been over there to talk to them. We will go and talk to anybody. We'll try to engage with the parishes over past Brentwood. So we will talk to whoever, Herringate and Ingrave, very engaged with them. So we are trying to get ahead of the game and find out exactly how our communities are going to be impacted. Anyway, enough from me. I'm going to pass it over to Danny Lovey.
Good evening, everybody. One of the things that I can do is go on a little bit long, so I won't, because I know there's a lot to get through. So if I could just briefly sum up the situation where we are in probably about 5 minutes. There are actually two battles in this campaign. The one that we're talking about is Dunton Garden Suburb, which of course is the big one. which of course is within the part of the Basildon borough and the Brentwood borough. But how did this really come about? Well, this really came about because when Basildon put forward their last local plan back in last year, 2014, which was the second local plan that had come up with an increased number of houses, they put in an area to the west of Langdon, which I then discovered after taking lots of research, was actually really in Dunton. And this goes by the name of PADC5. Now PADC5, the western extension of Basildon that's proposed in the local plan by Basildon Council, actually goes right up to the Brentwood border with Basildon. And what of course is being proposed by Brentwood is, what a nice idea if we then stick a lot of our housing alongside that as well. That'll be a long way away from the centre of Brentwood and a long way from the villages, and we'll have less people complaining, and maybe the people in West Horndon may get off our back as well. Well, it was all very cunning plan, but at least we worked out what their angle is. What I would say is that what we really need is to defeat PADC5 and Dunton. And the reason why we need to do this is because PADC5 in itself will obliterate Dunton as we know it, and will build right up to the border of Brentwood. So that's it in a concise way of what we've got here. We've got PADC5 and we've got the Brentwood plan, which is to extend effectively PADC5 into their area and call it the nice pretty name of Dunton Garden Suburb. So that's really where we are, and if there's anybody that doesn't understand that, you won't be the only ones. So it is a complex issue, but if anyone's got a question of me about it, then I'll be happy to try and help.
Is that 2,700 houses you mentioned that, it was you, wasn't it, that mentioned it at...
PADC5, 2,300.
2,300.
Yeah, 2,300.
This was the master plan we thought was up the sleeve in the first
now,
place.
but within that PADC5, some goes across the A127, but most of it is the southern side of the A127, so it's a bit complex.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danny. You've kept us nicely on track there. Looking down the agenda. As I said, there will be this video from Philip Gibbs, and sorry if I'm standing in your way, and he's incorporated the Essex Wildlife presentation. Excellent, I've seen it. Then we'll have what's called a politician's drop-in, and you can see we have Philip sent out a lot of invitations, and we've got a very good response. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending this evening. I know you've all got very busy schedules in your diary, especially running up to the various elections. Then we have questions and answers. Questions from the floor. I've also got a list of questions there from the web, and I'm sure that our politicians here and planners will be able to give us some very good answers. Then, if there's time, I've got a presentation. It's a bit humorous, very serious, and it's a question and answer with you. And it's going to try and show you how ridiculous this proposal is. Because we're all going through austerity, financial crisis. And I'm just going to give you a very high level of what this silly proposal is going to cost. And no one's got the money.
Builders have.
And then there'll be a close down. Okay? Right, as I say, I'm going to try and keep a very tight eye on the timetable. But one thing before I hand over to Philip is just to explain to people, Danny said it in words, I will say it in a picture. Okay, does everyone know where the Tesco store is? And the Tesco mini roundabout there? Okay. That's the C2C track going from Southend into London. That is the southern boundary. You've then got Mandeville Way to the Toomey roundabout. Then you dogleg to the left along the B148 past Fort Dunton, and you hit the A127. So Mandeville Way and the B148 is the eastern boundary, the A127 is the northern, and the western boundary is the western boundary is the A128. Now those of you who are observant will say, hold on, you haven't got Lower Dunton Road. Correct. You haven't got Dunton Village. Correct. As you'll hear in the video, Dunton Village or Dunton Waylets goes back to the Doomsday Book. It's going to be obliterated. Those of you who are also extremely observant will say, where's the caravan park, Dunton Caravan Park? And I'll say, good question that, because that's going to be obliterated. No one knows what's going to happen to those poor people.
Fantastic.
They're in the twilight of their life. They've worked for this country. They've brought their children up in this country. They've paid taxes. Many of them have fought for this country. And then at the end of their life, when they think they've got a peaceful, pleasant place to live, they have this huge, great sword hanging over them. And I say to every politician that put this proposal forward, shame on you. Shame on putting those poor people through their uncertainty. Yeah? Anyway, that's the end of me. I'll now hand over to Philip. Oh, one last thing. Sorry, Philip. There's one. There it is. It's a. I'm not used to Philip's keyboard. I'm trying to get back, but I've lost it. The point was, it is a nice green belt land, but if this goes ahead, that's a scorched earth. It will be total devastation. Wildlife, Asian villages, the whole thing. Sorry about that.
Okay, just bear with me 1 minute while I get the video. Go. As Britain recovered from the Second World War, its towns and cities started to expand outwards. Some far-sighted people saw the threat that this urban sprawl posed to our countryside. So, legislation was enacted to protect green belts of land around London and other major cities. Although the planning legislation has been revised, the main principles remain the same. The law still protects the green belt, but now, with a growing housing shortage, it is under increased threat from developers who are forming powerful lobby groups to push for large areas of the greenbelt to be built on. It isn't hard to see why they are so keen. There are plenty of brownfield sites that could be developed, but they are more expensive to buy. Often they are held by investors waiting for the moment to cash in. Once bought for housing, they need to be cleared and decontaminated from their former use. The developer's potential for profit takes a huge dent. Now, if instead the developer can get an option to buy a nice piece of cheap greenbelt land near a major city like London, and then get the planning permission agreed, the value of the land shoots up and the builders can make huge profits even before they have started building. Through the influence of planning consultancies, our newspapers are being padded with stories about how the Greenbelt is holding back our economy. We are told that the Greenbelt has more land set aside for golf courses than wildlife conservation. Even that the rest is a desert of poor agricultural land, marred by years of pesticide use. To get the real facts for myself, I joined a small wildlife team led by Annie Gordon from the Essex Wildlife Trust to visit the site of Dunton Garden Suburb, a proposed development west of Basildon on Greenbelt land. Since the last election, we've seen the number of houses being built on Greenbelt increasing to over 5,000 per year. If this new urban extension of Basildon is allowed to go ahead, it could add more homes than that to the total in one go, and it is only one of many similar projects in the pipeline. The proposed site, which covers a golf course and some fields used for crops and grazing, turned out to be anything but a wildlife desert. In the centre of Dunton Hills, there is a patch of ancient woodland with 2 natural ponds that support a wealth of biodiversity. Our keen-eyed experts found owl pellets under one tree near the corner of the wood, which when tested later were confirmed to be from a barn owl. They were even able to identify the remains of the owl's meals of field voles, wood mice and a shrew, evidence that the hedgerows and ditches here are home to a diverse population of small mammals. Other protected animals found included badgers, buzzards and a heron. A habitat assessment carried out on behalf of the Brentwood and Basildon councils for the development mentioned that there are local wildlife sites nearby, but separated from Dunton Hills by road and rail barriers. Inexplicably, the assessment missed a local wildlife site within the location, running from Eastland Springs through woodlands along the Mardyke tributary, and another potential local wildlife site at Green Meadows. These were listed in Brentwood's Wildlife Site Review in 2012, so it is hard to see how even the most casual research would have missed them. But they did. Annie Gordon was impressed with the site and called it a green corridor linking to the country parks of Langdon Hills. You can't preserve this habitat by building on it. The outline plans propose to keep a narrow stretch of green space, but the disturbance from people and their pets would chase away many of the rarer species. If we build all around the conservation areas, they will lose their wildlife under the pressure from the surrounding population. We need to preserve much more. This is the Essex Wildlife Trust Statement of Objection, prepared by their Conservation Officer, Annie Gordon. Essex Wildlife Trust objects to the joint proposal by Brentwood and Basildon Borough Councils for a garden suburb on the land east of West Horndon. This site functions as an important wildlife corridor, linking designated habitats at Thorndon to the north and Langdon to the southeast. The proposed garden suburb would have unacceptable adverse impacts on priority ancient woodland and deciduous woodland habitats, hedgerows and field margins. The proposal would have unacceptable adverse impacts on protected species including barn owls, badgers and bats. Barn owls are rare and their survival depends on the protection of roost nest sites. They need large areas of rough grassland for hunting small mammals. Badgers tend to use the same pathways to foraging areas and will continue to do so despite any obstacles that are placed in their way. New roads will be crossed despite any difficulty or danger presented. Bats depend on key habitat linkages such as hedgerows, woodland shores and shelter belts. If these are lost or severed, this will have indirect impacts on the breeding sites or nesting places used by bats. The proposal will have unacceptable impacts on Eastland Spring local wildlife site due to loss of habitat connectivity and increased recreational pressure. Local wildlife sites are recognised as having nationally and regionally important habitats and species. They are fundamental in maintaining the current levels and ensuring the long-term survival of wildlife in Essex. The proposed site comprises a network of hedgerows, veteran trees, field margins, pockets of remnant ancient woodland, ponds and ditches. These provide a suite of relatively undisturbed wildlife habitats which support significant biodiversity, including red-listed birds of conservation concern such as song thrush and skylark. Development of this site would result in a catastrophic loss of vital biodiversity. local authorities in England and Wales have a legal duty to conserve biodiversity. This is recognised and formalised within Section 40 of the National Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006, which states, "Every public body must, in exercising its functions, have regard, so far as is consistent with the proper exercise of those functions, to the purpose of conserving biodiversity." Conserving biodiversity includes, in relation to a living organism or type of habitat, restoring or enhancing a population or habitat. This places a duty on all local authorities to conserve wider biodiversity, in addition to the statutory protection given to certain sites and species. The government's planning policy guidance, outlined in the National Planning Policy Framework, highlights the importance of protecting ecological networks. It states that, to minimise impacts on biodiversity, planning policies should promote the preservation, restoration and recreation of priority habitats, ecological networks, and the protection and recovery of priority species populations. Essex Wildlife Trust believes that the proposed development would damage the integrity of a vital wildlife corridor and damage or destroy priority habitats and protected and priority species of high conservation importance. This would have a detrimental impact on local biodiversity and could adversely impact on important designated sites at Thorndon and Langdon. For these reasons, the Trust will be submitting a formal objection to this proposal.
Dunton is in the Domesday Book. Dunton Waylets is the crossroad, and it was the original crossroad before the A127 was built, crossing Bithlower Dunton Road. It's a linear village. It was part of the way for the Pilgrim's Way, and it's been around for that period of time, but pretty much unchanged.
We look around us and we're surrounded by wonderful open countryside. Where exactly, if this proposal went ahead, where would the buildings go? Do we know that yet?
But as far as I understand, they're talking, I think, about, I guess they started about 3,000 houses, going up to 6,000 houses. But the area that's to be developed, effectively coming out of the green belt, or suggested coming out of the green belt, runs from the A127, which maybe you can see the road up there, all the way down to the A128, and all the way down to the railway line. And the area is probably about 4 square kilometres. It's an incursion into the green belt of a massive size. But regardless of that, the burden upon the infrastructure, which is already strained, let alone having the buildings from Archersfield and Dunton coming on stream, can't cope.
Last week, David Cameron promised to protect the Greenbelt. Why then are we facing the imminent loss of so much of it? The National Planning Policy Framework sets out the rules for how to decide where to build in the UK, and asserts that the essential characteristics of greenbelts are their openness and their permanence. Inappropriate development of greenbelt should only be allowed in very special circumstances. But developers are now using legal precedents to argue that a simple housing shortage combined with a few sweeteners to make up for the harm is sufficient to count as those very special circumstances. The tactic was used to successfully push through a development of 800 homes on Greenbelt in Coventry just this week. The government policy also requires local authorities to draw up new local plans for housing, including a green belt review, where the green belt boundaries should only be altered in exceptional circumstances. Now, if that sounds a little weaker than the very special circumstances needed to build on Greenbelt, well, indeed it is. So it's no surprise that the biggest potential loss of Greenbelt is coming from these reviews. Local authorities have to assess the need for new houses and produce a number to build in the next 15 years. In the case of Basildon, they came up with a figure of 16,000 new homes. Only about half that number can realistically be built on brownfield sites, So if they stick with those figures, Basildon is going to have to lose about 2 square miles of its greenbelt. The situation with other councils surrounded by greenbelt is very similar. There is some flexibility in the assessment process, but Basildon, Brentwood, Castle Point and many more have all gone for the higher end of the possible range of numbers they could have set for their housing need. Do they have to stick with it? The councils say that if they don't plan for lots of homes to be built, the planning inspectorate will reject their plans. Then developers will take advantage and get permission to build where they like. They also say that the government is imposing these targets on them and that they have no choice. Of course, the government tells a different story. They say that the councils are setting their own targets. They have clarified that the objectively assessed need is just the first step in setting the housing target. If there is not enough space to build without losing valuable greenbelt land, then the councils can use that as a constraint to reduce their target below their objectively assessed need. This suggests that they don't need to build on greenbelt at all, but they're still saying they do. Something is not quite right, and we want to know what it is. Why do the councils seem to want to build more houses than they need to? And why are they willing to sacrifice the greenbelt to do it? One thing that's clear is that it's not the ordinary public who are driving this. Yes, there is pressure for more houses, but in a simple yes-no poll run by The Guardian last year, 75% says that houses should not be built on greenbelt. One factor is government incentives such as the new homes bonus that councils are increasingly relying on to keep council tax down. But how much of the pressure is also coming from London? Andrew Boff, who may be the next London mayor after the elections in 2016, has made it clear that he wants new powers to force building just outside the Greater London boundary. He wants to build 40 new garden towns around the greenbelt with 10,000 homes in each. He even wants some of the housing revenue to be drawn back into London. Is our greenbelt simply the victim of a monumental power struggle between local authorities? So, if the current government is not getting it right, would a change help? Both the Labour and Conservative parties say they want to build 200,000 houses per year. Labour want to give towns a right to grow, but critics say this will leave little protection for the greenbelt, and Labour have not said much to dispute that so far. The Liberal Democrats are pledging to build even more houses, 300,000 per year. So what is their greenbelt policy? There are solutions to the housing crisis that don't require loss of the greenbelt. The first one is to ensure that brownfield sites in towns and cities are used to the full. London is not densely packed compared to other major financial cities of the world. New York and Tokyo house the same number of people in half the space. So more dense, even high-rise housing could be another way forward. A more controversial policy, pushed most strongly by UKIP, is to reduce immigration. After all, most of our population growth is actually due to net immigration numbers. Workers from abroad are filling our skills shortage in areas such as the health service, but others are coming here looking for a better life, only to find themselves being exploited in low-paid work while living in crowded conditions or worse. If those solutions come at too high a price, how about spreading the wealth around the country a bit more? The North East is losing jobs and has a lot more space to build houses. In the age of the internet, why do businesses need to crowd together in big cities? Why can't we build new eco-towns with new 21st century jobs where people once again live close to their work and house prices are more reasonable? When the party manifestos appear, we hope we will see clear information, not just about the number of houses they intend to build, but also how they intend to protect the green belt and what options they are going to use to achieve their targets. We also need to know who is going to pay for all the new infrastructure needed for those houses. Developers make big profits, but politicians seem reluctant to take much of it away to pay for roads, schools and hospitals, which are already at bursting point. We now hear that young first-time buyers of new starter homes will get a 20% discount. This will be paid for by deleting the builder's obligation to provide a levy for community infrastructure and affordable housing, but not if the development is on greenfield sites. This might encourage developers to use more brownfield sites, but the councils will lose out on money for infrastructure unless they get more building onto the green belt. Not exactly a step in the right direction then. Post-election, we expect to enter a new era of austerity. How then is the new infrastructure going to be paid for? It is no use proposing a development like Dunton Garden Suburb on the basis that there is potential for improving infrastructure, when the truth is there will be no means to realise that potential. Overpopulation is a worldwide problem. In the Amazon, Borneo and Indonesia, it is driving the destruction of the rainforests needed for their biodiversity and capacity to absorb greenhouse gases. In the UK, similar forces are now threatening to destroy the greenbelt, along with its wildlife. If we can't find an antidote to the destruction here, how can we expect the third world to help protect our planet?
Thank you, Philip. That was a fantastic presentation, and thank you very much to Essex Wildlife Trust for their input. I've actually said to Philip that I hear that David Attenborough is looking to retire, and I think we've possibly got a replacement. One of the things, amongst many, that really confuses me is how that land, and then Philip mentioned that it's been completely overlooked, that it was rich in biodiversity. How can that be? The planners have actually missed it. I don't believe they have missed it, but that's a personal view. But one of the councillors in Brentwood, and please take this message back to him from people from Brentwood, I can't remember if it's Baker or Aspinall. It's a matter of record because it is on the radio, which Philip has got on our website. He goes along and said, it's us, it's Basil and Brentwood, and it's a combined effort. But then he gives his hand away when he starts talking about them, that's us, and over there. And then he goes on to talk about the actual area, scrubland. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. Dr. Annie Gordon, an evident person, she knows what she's talking about, and it's completely rubbished that view. Just to promote my family, I spoke to my eldest child, daughter. She actually has a degree and a master's degree in environmental impact analysis and assessment. And when I told my daughter about this, she's a calm person, unlike me. She said, "Dad, the man's an idiot. How can he dismiss that land?" She said, "Just looking at it, that's going to be rich in biodiversity." Dr. Andy Gordon actually and Essex Wildlife went on site there, and they actually proved it. So please take the message back, Brentwood councillors. If Mr. Baker or I can't remember if it's Aspinall, one of those two, if they can't put out the right facts, don't put anything out at all. You're misleading people. Anyway, it's now going to pass it over to our politicians in this slot. I would ask you to take a maximum of 5 minutes, please. As always in these meetings, R.A.I.D, Residents Against Inappropriate Developments, is a completely non-political group. It would be wrong to promote one group or another. So, I've said in the past, please no outrageous bandstanding for your own group. Otherwise, we will issue you with a yellow card, and if it gets blatant, we will issue you with a red card. And if we go round from the start of the mic and we go round this way, Mike, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to add what I said to Philip earlier, what a superb film it was. I watched it twice now today because I managed to watch it in my lunch hour at work. Chair, I mean, we have been asked to give our views on what we think of the application, but also what our party will do regarding the bigger picture of Labour.
That's the brief that Philip's done. He's our press officer. He's the communications mouthpiece.
I didn't want anyone to think I was dropping into Labour Party politics. I think we've all been asked to say where our party does stand on housing, because as Philip mentioned in the video, it's an international issue, and it's going to need some big decisions to be made. So there's a little bit just to explain what our policies are on the houses that we need to build. But first of all, I'd just like to say this is not an appropriate development, and it's not going to be any very special circumstances, in my opinion, why this development should go ahead. I'm a Labour Party candidate, but I also consider myself to be a Green candidate and a community candidate, and I want to make sure that if I'm elected, I'm supporting the residents to make sure that their voices are heard at this local level. It's got to be. These decisions are made locally by local representatives, your elected local councillors. So I want to add my voice to yours when you're objecting to this development. So I'll just quickly run through the Labour policies. Philip mentioned.
So could you just introduce who exactly you are and what's your name and where do you come from?
Sure.
Brentwood or Basildon or
I'm Mike Lussurf, sorry. I'm Mike Lussurf from the Labour Party parliamentary candidate for South Basildon and East Thurrock.
Thank you.
Council for Brentwood.
Yeah, and I'm the Brentwood Borough Councillor, just coming to the end of my second term, and I'm standing down on the 7th of May as I've been fighting a parliamentary campaign for the last couple of years as well. First of all, Philip mentioned 200,000 houses, I think was mentioned in the video. I've pledged, and the party's pledged, to build 200,000 homes, and we've got to look at them as homes for people. We need to build homes for our families, for our children that are growing up and want to stay living in the area, and that's the real problem. We're seeing people having to move away from the area because there aren't enough houses. So we have pledged to build. We know we need to build, but we've got to build in the right places. Brownfield first, and I think again in the video it alluded to the fact that could solve half of the problem that Basildon will have regarding its housing if we make sure that all the brownfield sites are used up before anyone contemplates using the green belt. Use it or lose it powers for local councils to make sure that there's a lot of land that's owned by developers that are sitting on the land waiting for the prices to go up before they sell it. Now we've got to make sure that land's used before anybody looks at using the green belt. And the bigger picture, we do need new towns. Labour will pledge to invest in building new towns, but we don't need them in and around London. To hear that, I mean, that's crazy. So we don't need them in the south east. We're in the east of England, but we are, just to the east of London. We need to build new towns in the Midlands and in the north, where we can develop and spread. What this country needs is a much more equitable and level playing field for everybody. And why can't we invest in other areas and make sure that we spread that, hopefully, that investment in the whole country. My personal record, I do oppose this Dunton Garden Suburb. I've been very active the last couple of years in the campaign, the Green Action Group, the GAG Group, campaigning against the Dry Street development, and I've been supporting their fundraising events for the last couple of years, and I'll be doing that, win or lose, on May the 7th. I'm still committed to supporting that group. There's big developments all over the constituency. Stamford-le-Hope, there's another big development planned. I don't like these bolts on, let's build a small town and add it onto a big town and not worry too much about the infrastructure. We can absorb that, because that cannot happen. We know what it's like when we get on the trains in the morning going into work, the people that work into London. We know what our roads are like. We know we cannot do that. We cannot just keep adding bits to towns on this scale. But you can't say no to everything either, and I've been working a lot in East Tilbury. There's going to be a housing development in East Tilbury. That development comes with a bridge over the railway as part of the deal, if you like, for that development. That is something that a lot of residents are very interested in looking at. The plans haven't come to the table yet, but that is something that I probably will support if it's the will of the local people, and that's an area that needs development. It used to be such a thriving area, East Tilbury, in the 60s and 70s, and that is an area that definitely can do with some investment. So we do need to build. It's got to be in the right places. As I say, a community MP, I want to work with the local council, I want to work with yourselves and the local elected representatives But I do, at the end of the day, want to make sure that this development does not go ahead for all the reasons that were pointed out in the video. Thank you.
Apologies, it shows that Philip and I don't get enough time to talk together. We kind of communicate through email because we're both very busy. When this runs on, this campaign, we will be looking for additional committee members to share that load. But now, yeah.
Well, can't just parliamentary candidates speak first and then the council?
Let's go around that way. Yeah, keep it.
Do so.
Yep. Okay.
I won't speak for very long, but if it's all right, I'll come to the front. I'm Byron Taylor. I'm the leader of the Labour group here in Basildon, and I represent a group on the council and have done for the last couple of years. Look, I'll tell you a little bit about me, because by profession, I'm a trade unionist. That's what I do. I represent people in the world of work. But I have a young family as well. I've got 2 girls, 7 and 3, and I've got to think about their future, and I've got to think about where they're going to live, and I've got to think about the future of our community. That's why I'm a Labour councillor. Now, we have a problem here in Basildon in that there are many thousands on the housing waiting list. You need an income of over 30,000 a year to get a house in Basildon. A lot of people, that is unaffordable. So there is a clear need for homes in Basildon. And the proposal to build in brownfield sites is something which I'm supportive of. I think we should build on brownfield sites, that's really important. But more than that, we have to think about where else we are going to build, the more difficult areas, and we have to think about what is achievable. Now, the Labour Party has not run Basildon Council since 2002. Since 2002, it's been a Conservative council, and since the elections last year, the executive is a UKIP/Tory administration, 6-Tory to UKIP. The Labour Party has got a proud record of opposing development in inappropriate places. We opposed the development at Dry Street. We opposed the development at Markham's Chase. We opposed the development at Kentview Recreation Ground. The Labour Party opposed every one of those developments because they were wrong. They were the wrong developments in the wrong place, and that was not fair on local residents. And I'm proud to say that we've continued that policy. We will always oppose inappropriate developments. Now, I could stand before you as leader of the Labour group and say I'm automatically opposed to the development, but there is a consultation running, and the position of the Labour Party has been very clear. We're going to keep listening and wait for the consultation to close and hear what residents have to say. I don't think people want, look, before I got involved in politics, I certainly didn't like politicians who were knee-jerk reactions, and I always said I wasn't going to be like that. So I'm waiting for the consultation to finish. I want to hear what people have got to say. But I was really surprised when the proposal came forward, because I'm not on the council executive, but I attended as an observer, and the proposal came forward at the council executive, and it was put through. All members of the executive voted for it, all the Tory, all the UKIP, and I was under the assumption that there had been some kind of discussion with local residents groups, and I was quite, time to wind up already.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised that you didn't know about it before it got off the ground. But as you saw from the video, I asked the first question, I asked about the consultation. There's a lot more to hear, but the Labour Party, if got its ears open, will listen carefully to what residents have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to come and see you. My name is Jeff Williams. I've been a Basildon councillor for 30 plus years. Most of that time I've been fighting development on green spaces. More particularly, as some of you probably will know, the southwest part of the borough, the Dry Street area, which is where I live. To that extent, I suppose I'm a NIMBY. One thing that those 30 years have taught me is that forget your local wildlife site, forget your UK habitat site recognised by Europe. Without the Green Belt designation, you'll fight a very, very difficult cause. And let me say from the outset that, well, until this Dunton development raised its head, most of us probably thought that Basildon Newtown had reached its western boundary. It had certainly filled the designated area up as far as Tesco's, Mandeville Way, as we saw from the maps earlier on. And then suddenly we get a Dunton Garden Suburb. And let me say from the outset that I'm unequivocally opposed to it. A sprawl, an urban sprawl that is being considered, because that's what it is. And I think Basildon Borough Council, and this came over also in the video, needs to take a long, hard look at what are termed objectively assessed housing needs. There's been a very good paper produced by one of the action groups up in Billericay. It's on the web, you can find it, have a look at it. It makes a very, very strong argument for why the figures are wrong. And even if development on this scale were acceptable in the green belt, which it isn't, but even if it were, it is too much. It's too close to Basildon, and it's too far from Brentford. Now, you're all going to have your own interpretations of what the green belt means to you. But in general terms, the green belt and the borough's green spaces are essential features of the lifestyle of the people of Basildon. It's why from the 1950s onwards people came to live in Basildon, where they came out from bombed out London, and why people still keep coming, despite the fact that more and more green spaces are being filled up. To quote a well-known environmentalist, and actually if you didn't hear it, go to Radio 4, listen again. Saving, what's it called? Saving the World? No, it's not called so safe. It's an environmental programme. Somebody remind me.
Costing the Earth.
Costing the Earth. Go listen to that. It was on broadcast last night. An excellent half-hour programme about the dilemmas facing everybody concerned with the green belt. I'll come back to that in a moment. Paul, I'm getting a signal. I've got a little way to go, so please bear with me. Because I speak a bit more slowly than some of the others. I want to dispel a few myths about green belt and green space and the development and the question of housing need, which is being bandied about by other politicians and nationally as well. The real housing need in Basildon Borough is for affordable housing. It's for people with medium and lower incomes. No one is going to build housing to meet the housing needs of the people of Basildon on expensive greenfield land, which will be solely for the sale of 4 to 5 bedroom executive houses. That's what will happen. We've seen it elsewhere. And always across the country, it's what happens with green belt development. The myth that it's going to solve any of our housing problems is precisely that. The other myth is that pressure from immigration. Total nonsense and a complete red herring. There is no pressure on immigration on housing in Basildon. Complete nonsense. You can't even get a house, a social house, affordable house in Basildon unless you've lived here for 7 years. People don't just come in and take houses. That's a myth that some of us feel really passionately about. I will wind up now.
Yes, please, Jeff. Now, up to your time.
Lib Dem policy, yeah, okay, very briefly, we do say 300,000 homes, not 300,000 houses. And those homes can be sought from a number of we've talked about brownfield sites. There are hundreds of thousands of empty properties across the country. And housing development, where it is needed, where it is built, must be community driven, must be where the community wants it and where the community needs it. We don't need it here. We have enough development, and I shall continue to oppose it.
Thank you, Jeff. And the next one, please. Would you introduce yourself?
Progressively more difficult to get to the front as we were back. My name's Philip Minor. I'm the Vice Chair of Planning on Brentwood Council. I've also, on Brentwood Council, which is currently being run by a group called the Accord. It's Lib Dems working together with the Labour Party, working together with Brentwood First, who are ex-Tories by and large, and an independent as well. Under the Accord, I also have the role of being the member lead on the local plan. So the local plan, in Brentwood terms, is very much, I've been right at the centre of it. I need to stress, though, that that doesn't mean that it's my plan. This is not something that I've come up with. This is largely something which has been, the officers have come up with this. We, as councillors, I always say to everybody, every politician is an amateur. Apologies to everybody here, but every politician, including the Prime Minister of this country, is essentially an amateur. The officers, the civil servants, the people who've got professional qualifications, they know their jobs. In my role as involved in the local plan, I take a lot of advice from what the officers are saying. And I'm going to come back to that right at the end, because I think it's a very important point in terms of who you trust and where you get your figures from and what you need to believe. I think we've had an excellent presentation. The film is an excellent presentation, but there's certainly some issues in terms of what's being said. I would like to say I'm a member of the Essex Wildlife Trust. I'm also a member of the Woodland Trust. And I also got into the political process. I became a councillor because I started out where a lot of people in this room are. I was a protester against local development, so that's where I started. I wrote down something that was said earlier on. If you can't put up right facts, don't put up any at all, you're misleading people. Now, I think some of the things that are being said in the film are excellent. They're absolutely true. There are also things which are being said in this which are essentially misleading people. I'll just go through a couple of the things which I think are misleading here. Let's talk about building on brownfield sites. In Brentwood, I don't know the figures for Basildon, but I'll give you the figures for Brentwood. In Brentwood, in terms of what our officers tell us, we have enough brownfield sites to build 2,500 houses. In terms of the way the objectively assessed need figures come out, we're being asked to look for places for 5,500 houses. So we have 3,000 sites that we need to try and find a location for, and we can't find them on brownfield land. So the idea that everything can be done on brownfield land won't work. I understand that's not popular, but that's the reality that we're faced with. It's also not true to say that in terms of the objectively assessed need, the councils have deliberately gone to the higher end of the figures that were presented to them. The way the objectively assessed need is extremely complicated, and I have to say it's effectively it's something that the council, the national government has done to local councils in order to drop it on us and drop it on your local representatives to make it look like we're doing something. We're not essentially doing it. The objectively assessed need is something we have been asked to come up with. In Brentwood, we went out to some local consultants. They came up with a figure. The figure that they come out with is something that we need to stick to. And I'll just give you an example. Anybody here who knows where Uttlesford is in Essex, Uttlesford tried to put forward figures in their local plan which were not as high as the planning inspector wanted them to put in. I checked on it earlier on today. It seems to me they put in figures of 10,000 sites, and the inspector, it looks like from the report I saw, the inspector thought they should have had 1,000 more sites than that. Because the inspector didn't think that their 10,000 sites were enough, the inspector threw their local plan out of court. Now, I have been in a situation where I've sat in a room where the local council is trying to defend local people's interests against the interests of commercial companies. You've got to remember that what you get down to with planning is that ultimately, if a commercial company, a lot of house builders want to come along and build on land, and the local plan won't defend you because the local plan is too weak because it has numbers which are too small in terms of quote-unquote objectively assessed need, the developer will be able to run roughshod over your local council, your opinions, everybody's opinions. There won't be a vote involved, there won't be a consultation involved, they will just be able to do what they want. What your local councils have to do is to do their responsible process properly, and this is what we're trying to do. It's a consultation. This is an excellent thing. This is exactly what consultation is all about. Respond to the consultation, say what you don't like about it, we also, as local councillors, responsible local councillors, have to find solutions to these problems. These are problems we're being left with by central government.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's like buses. 3 of us come along at once. You've had 3 Lib Dems in a row. So it's a bit worrying for you. My name is David Kendall. I'm a Brentwood Borough Councillor. I'm also an Essex County Councillor. I'm also the parliamentary candidate for Brentwood and Ongar for the Lib Dems. I live in a village called Blackwall in Brentwood. We have an illegal traveller site in our village, so I have some experience as to what illegal traveller sites are like and some of the issues you face. I found the video very interesting and also the text, and thanks very much for sending that to us beforehand. I've been asked to give a little bit of background about housing policy and also my views in terms of the proposal. As Jeff has mentioned, we are talking about, as Lib Dems, building about 300,000 houses or homes a year. And the reality for that is very simple. As a councillor, I get people who want to protect the green belt on one hand. I get people saying to me, I've got nowhere to live on the other hand. Okay? Unlike some people would say, these aren't immigrants who are looking for housing to live in. These are people born and bred in Essex who want to live close to their families and don't want to move further off into the wilds of Essex to Clacton and Harwich and various other places. They want to live locally. So that's the dilemma that I, as a councillor, have to face. Now, many of us have children, as I say, who want to live close to home. They are having to move away. Against this background, the government is setting these housing targets that we as local authorities are being asked to meet. So where do I and the Lib Dems stand on the green belt? And it's very, very simple. We must exhaust all the brownfield options. We must do that before we ever look at the green belt. So let me be very, very clear on that. Okay, but there is going to come a time, and it won't be popular in this room, I accept that, but there is going to come a time when we have to look at the green belt. There is only so much brownfield around, so we have to do that. We have no choice. Now, if you ask residents about building on the green belt, 99% would say, no way, over my dead body. But if you then say to those people, do you want to see more homes built? A lot of them would say, yes, I do. So the problem is, where do we put all those new homes? Well, I can only speak as a councillor, as I say, the problem is when you are a councillor, you get both sides of the argument. You get people who need a home.
Yeah, but if the 3-bed house is going to be £300,000 in this new development, like they are at Dunton Field, how are local people that are on the housing list going to afford those homes?
Well, what I would say to you is this: if there's going to be not just at Dunton, anywhere, any development at all, there's got to be affordable homes. There's no point in having houses built anywhere which aren't affordable homes, which are some are for rent, some are for sale. Yeah, it's got to be a mixture of housing.
What percentages are we talking about with this development in terms of social housing and private?
Well, can I just say to you, this is the issue. It hasn't even got to that yet. This is a consultation. This is a consultation that's been put out by Brentwood and by Basildon. What needs to happen is the consultation needs to come back. Councillors need to sit down in Basildon and Brentwood, look at the consultation and decide whether they want to take it forward. Once they've done that, whatever happens, they'll have to go out and consult again if they want to take any proposals forward. That is the reality of the situation. Now, the situation in Brentwood has been explained briefly by my colleague, but we've got a situation, we're being told by government, we've got to build 5,500 new homes. We've got brownfield sites for 2,500 homes. So somewhere in Brentwood, we've got to look at green belt.
10 miles from Brentwood.
No, well, someone said earlier on, why not stuff it all down here? The reality is, if you look at the Brentwood Local Development Plan consultation, all potential housing developments in Brentwood are included on that housing consultation. We haven't excluded anything. We've taken advice, legal advice, where every single site that developers are looking at in Brentwood is included on our local plan. Okay? So I would ask you to look at that in detail before you suggest that we're suggesting it all comes down this way, because that simply is not the case.
It is the case.
No, it's not the case. No, it's not the case.
Council actively encourage, on their website, they actively encourage everyone in Blackmore to support Dunton Garden Suburb. As they actively did that, and if you look on the map, on the strategic growth options, all the development, practically all the development, is south of Brentwood.
Folks, could I just ask you please to hold your questions, because the politicians here are on a very tight timetable. Would you keep your questions till the session will follow? Thank you very much.
I personally think it's likely that all parts of the borough of Brentwood are going to have to take some form of housing development. Well,
Not north of the borough, obviously.
Well, let's see what happens.
Not in the strategic growth
Let's
options.
see what the consultation is. As I said to you before, if you look at our plan, every single development site that developers have looked at in Brentwood is in our plan. We're excluding nothing.
Yeah,
That's the reality.
90% is south of Brentwood.
No, it isn't. No, it's
keep it
all over.
to the end, please.
Sorry. It's, I'm just telling you the factual situation. So what I'm saying to you is this, okay? We have to look at the consultation, we have to take on board the views of residents in Brentwood, because that's obviously the area we represent. The councillors in Basildon have to do that as well. That's reality, and we have to then make a decision. But any decision that's made, it will have to go to consultation again.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are proposed, 5% of the electors will be given the power to demand a referendum on it. And on this particular development, I'm completely opposed to it for all the various reasons that we've heard and were so expertly covered in the presentation. I've been a local councillor, now a city alderman, for 39 years. And one of my roles in the city is I chair our Open Spaces Committee, which looks after 11,000 acres of Victorian green belt, before the word was invented, to the south, the west and the east of London, Epping Forest being the one on the east, which was designed to prevent urban sprawl with the Victorian suburbs. And without the corporation acquiring Epping Forest in the 1880s, the Victorian suburbs of Walthamstow and Leighton would have tarmacked it all over. And we need the same vision here, that it's very important to ensure that we don't allow urban sprawl. Now, we've heard the figures from Brentwood, and they're very fascinating, because the 3,000 houses here would deal with the whole of Brentwood's problems for the next 15 years that they can't solve on a brownfield site. But this is an issue that's actually wider than one borough, and it's wider than just Dunton. We need to actually look at what is the housing need that's needed. You can't, of course, go for a local plan with completely unrealistic numbers in there, because you will have it thrown out and then the council has no defence. But there is an intellectually defensible range. And I think that, again, the emerging local plan for Basildon needs much greater public consultation. I suspect, from my going around and talking to people, they will want to go for the lowest part of the range. But that's an issue that we have to actually find out people's opinions on and push that through into the plan. And then, of course, it's the nature and the type of housing. Now, I've always supported the sale of council houses, but what I've never supported is the restrictions on the reinvestment of those proceeds in affordable housing for local people. Now, when I was a Bedford councillor, when I chaired its policy committee, we did only the second in the country voluntary transfer of the whole of our council housing stock to a purposely created housing association, which is freed from those restrictions and has been able to reinvest 100% of the proceeds from the sale of council houses, and that has eased dramatically the housing problems in the borough on which I was formerly a councillor. And I think that we need to look at those types of solutions here as well. Those of you with very good eyesight will have seen that one of the files that could have been opened was ominously headed the London Borough of Basildon. That is something that would give me complete nightmares, but we have to be on our guard about it, because Crossrail, and no one has mentioned the impact of Crossrail, it opens in 3 years' time, comes out as far as Shenfield, and uniquely for transport, the Mayor of London has complete control of that line from Reading to Shenfield. I realise my time is up, but we have to be very careful about the designs of some Greater London Authority councillors to expand the boundaries of Greater London beyond its 1963 agreed boundaries to swallow up Thurrock and here. And we need to fight that very carefully. But Dunton, as a narrow single issue, I'm completely opposed to, and we have to keep that fight going. And if UKIP takes control of Basildon on the 7th of May, Dunton is dead. Thank you.
The presentation that Ian alluded to is a presentation that I will make if we have time, and I did call it the London Borough of Basildon. It fears. I'm frightened of that because we just have a mass concrete jungle joining Southend to London if we're not careful. Linda, sorry.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm the controversial one. I'm Linda Hodge. I am the UKIP group leader of Basildon Borough Council. I'm not up for election. I've already been elected and up for a term. So I thought I'd spend tonight looking at some of the facts, because obviously we all make decisions based on facts rather than promises. Basically, we have a housing crisis. Everybody in the room here tonight agrees with that. But basically, the South Essex is an area that continues to attract and retain people in the area for a mixture of reasons, not least of all the quality of life. We all live in a very, very nice neighbourhood, and it's close proximity to London's employment market. There are many challenges that the housing market faces, both now and in the future. Fundamentally, there will be tenure adjustments. We've talked tonight about affordable homes and that these homes aren't for anybody other than local people. Well, basically, there is always a mixture of housing in any borough. There's the privately rented sector, there's the social housing sector, there are the executive homes. You don't have to have lived in the borough for 7 years to have access to one or more of those tenure types. So there are basically many challenges facing us now and in the future. And being UKIP, I will tell you basically that the objectively assessed needs in its most simplistic format is basically looking at population growth. At the end of the day, people need to live in homes. And as I say, in its most simplistic form, we have an existing population, and obviously there are births, and unfortunately we lose loved ones. We also have an ageing population where we're all living so much longer. We also have in-migration, and basically that is fundamentally coming from London, basically. We also have out-migration. Some people leave and buy a holiday home. But we also have migrants from the European Union. And originally, basically, the countries that started to cooperate economically back in 1951 was a very, very small number of member states. Now there are 28 member states. And everybody that lives in those member states are lucky enough to be able to embrace what we call the free movement of peoples. So anybody from those 28 member states, if they so choose, can come and live in the UK. It's like the EU migration has risen largely as a result of the financial crisis in southern Europe and the ongoing migration from Eastern Europe. You may not be aware, but we also have non-EU migrants coming to the UK, and in 2008 the Labour government introduced a points-based system to regulate non-EU migrants into the country. The system was claimed that it would be tough, a tough Australian-style points-based system, but in fact it was neither tough nor Australian-like. So, just looking at some of the numbers, in 1997, net migration to the UK was just 47,000 people. We wasn't even talking about the issue of immigration. This year, up to September 2014, it was 298,000 people, and that's net migration. That's the sum of those people that have come to the UK seeking a better life and those that have subsequently left. Just to give you an idea, that's the size, basically, of the Basildon district, including Bitsy, Wickford, Billericay, Langdon Hills, all through the centre of Basildon.
Would have been told to build that every year.
Support this, or do you disagree that you don't want it?
Well, basically, what this government is doing, as far as I'm concerned, yep, I'm in there. You just asked me a question.
Yep, go on then, answer that one then. With
Okay.
Linda.
You're throwing me off the string.
Do you support Dunton
No.
Garden Suburb was the question.
No, it wasn't. It was to do with immigration.
Do you support us, or do you not support us?
Of course I support you.
Oh,
thank you.
Of course I support you.
I wasn't sure, actually. We've been around all of Europe, so...
No, what I'm trying to say, the message is, the reason that we are experiencing these high build numbers is because we have a growing population for a number of reasons. And until you can slow down or control immigration numbers, it doesn't matter if it's Dunton Garden Suburbs this year or next year or the year after, the numbers are still going up, and we will be repeatedly asked to find places.
Kerry? Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I won't try and bore you. It's a bit like Cluedo, isn't it? Everyone wants to support Dunton Garden Suburb. Someone's had to put the knife in it. Well, I'm Councillor Kerry Smith. I represent south of the railway line, Langdon in Hills and Nevermain on the county, and Nevermain on the borough ward. Can I ask a quick question? Who here lives in Brentwood? Who lives north of the railway line in Langdon? South of the railway line? Right, well, you're South Basel East Thurrock constituency, so that's Mike the Surf, Jeff Williams, myself, Stephen Metcalfe. So just thought I'd break that up if you didn't mind, Mr Chairman, because when the Boundary Commission do these parliamentary boundaries, it's a number crunching fiasco. Me, I live 10 minutes away from this proposed debacle. And I don't want to be rude, Mr Chairman, but I think it's disgusting we haven't had an apology from Brentwood. Basildon's been told to build over 3 times that amount of housing, right? We have the largest number of traveller sites in Essex. We've had the Dale Farm debacle and they want to stick all their housing on our doorstep. Another traveller site. Sorry, that is taking the biscuit. The answer should be no, no, no. Basildon's done it. And so what, Mr Chairman? You don't want your bit of greenery built on Blackmore. Tough luck. We've done our fair share. To his credit, has fought many battles with his wife Linda to save Dry Street, and many an hard-fought battle. It looks like we're going to lose that, and it's going to be a kick in the goalies to Basildon when we lose Dry Street, and I hope we don't. So we must club together and oppose this debacle. It's disgusting. We must not have this on our doorstep. If Brentwood's got to build, as was said by another speaker, Crossrail. Duh! Why not build Brentwood's allocation of houses nearer the Crossrail line? Hello, I mean, I'm no rocket science. I live school with an E maths, but I can work that one out, Mr Chairman. But it's true though, you know, They want to build their housing, put it nearer the main railway line. The C2C line's congested. Remember, Southend's got to build, Castle Point's got to build, Basildon's got to build, Havering's got to build, and so forth and so forth. That railway line has only got so much capacity. We aren't getting Crossrail. And I think I've made my point, Mr. Chairman.
One final point, Kerry. You haven't introduced yourself and who you represent. Your party.
I'm just independent. I was ex-UKIP till someone got parachuted in. But
So what's the
I won't say that.
Not giving the full.
Can I ask you just a very quick question? Yeah?
Okay.
Are you just against the Brentwood part of the development?
No, all of it should drop down dead. I mean, I live literally 10 minutes away.
What I'm saying. Are you just against the Brentwood side?
All of it.
Okay, so do you want to make that clear, that you're not just blaming the Brentwood side? Yeah?
No, absolutely against the whole kit and caboodle.
Just make it absolutely clear, you're also against the Basildon side of it, yeah?
All of it.
Yeah,
Every last corner of it.
Okay.
All right. Lovely.
Kerry, I didn't realise, and I've just been updated, you are a parliamentary candidate, are you not?
Yes, running as an independent.
Right, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Would you introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
It's going to be a difficult one to top, isn't it? My name is Julie Hyde. I'm a Conservative councillor for Langdon Park, and obviously Dunton is within my constituency. So I'm here not just representing people of Dunton, but myself as well and my family, because we all live within 5 minutes of this building. I've had a letter given to me by MP John Barron. So if you just indulge me for a moment, I've been asked to read this to you so you get his views along with mine. This is a letter that he sent in to Basildon Council objecting to this proposal. It says, I write with regard to the planning, housing development on Dunton Park site. In particular, I'm concerned by the effects of a substantial increase in our local population upon already stretched public services. You will be aware that Basildon Hospital are already struggling to keep pace with local demand, and only recently, out of special measures, was not long ago placed on Black Watch because of the financial concerns GP services in our area are also under strain. Furthermore, C2C Limited, the train operating company, is consulting regarding a planned reduction in all London trains starting from Langdon, whilst our roads require further investment too. Meanwhile, there is also increasing demand for places at local secondary schools. I will find it difficult to endorse development in my constituency if a corresponding increase in local infrastructure capacity is not implemented at the same time. It is also essential that these infrastructure improvements be fully funded in advance. The money has to be on the table. In response, I would welcome your confirmation that increased infrastructure capacity is being considered alongside the proposed development, and that funding will be forthcoming should they receive planning permission. Now, I absolutely endorse every word that John Barron has written here. The infrastructure has to be in place for any development, appropriate, inappropriate, any development. And this was one of the issues that I stood firm against when they started to develop on the former Langdon school site. That development still isn't finished, and there are already problems with the infrastructure in and around Langdon as a result of that development. The funding to cover any infrastructure has to be in place. Roads, hospitals, GPs, schools, train services, water supply, sewage removal, drainage, electricity, gas supply, telephone cables. It affects every one of us as individual residents and businesses as well. And I do not support this proposal in any way, shape or form, and I would urge everybody here this evening to take part in the online consultation, and if you haven't got access to computers, write a letter, pick up a telephone. but please take part in the consultation, because the more people that stand and speak against it, the more likely our voices are to be heard. Thank you.
Our next speaker is coming to the front there. Just to remind everybody, the cut-off date, and it was only the pressure that our membership put on Basildon Council, it was going to be 19th of February, but with pressure, we pushed it out to the 16th of March. That's Monday, 5 p.m. As the last speaker said, you can email in, you can write in, and you can use the council web portal. It's a very good system, that web portal. You register, you get confirmation back, then you go back in, and you say, I object, and you put down your valid reasoned objections. Stephen.
Yes. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, if you have this sheet, can I say I am not and have never been a Brentwood Borough Councillor, but I am a Basildon Borough Councillor. And Kerry just did a straw poll. I'd like one. How many of you have already written in a letter of objection to this application? Good. Right, and the others of you who haven't, I hope we can persuade you to do so.
Stephen, I'm being very rude, I'm just going to interject there. Do you also realise that even if you have objected on the council web portal, you can go back? You can go back as many times, it's completely valid. Every member of your family, including children, and I've validated that with the planning officers, every member, mum, dad and 2 children, that's 4 objections as minimum. The only thing you need is a unique email address. Sorry, Stephen.
Add another half minute on, Derek, please. In terms of the infrastructure, we don't have a look at the map there. The 127 operates at overcapacity for most of the day. The A13 is at capacity for large portions of the day. In rush hours, the C2C line is over capacity. If this goes ahead, we're going to require 5-6 doctors' surgeries. We're going to require extra hospital facilities and so on like that. We probably need to have some sort of sewage treatment plant down there. We probably need to get gas in there, electricity, roads, schools, the lot. And when that comes down to it, most of those infrastructure requirements will not come from the developer. They will come out of the public purse through the government. And at this present moment, I'm not sure that we would see that. I did a rough calculation earlier on today. Let's say that each of those houses was sold for £250,000 and there were 6,000 of them. That is a significant amount. There's about 1.5 billion pounds worth of houses you could sell. But I could quite well imagine that 300-400 million of that could be required in the development of the infrastructure. And that will never come out of the development. That will have to come out of taxes, I'm afraid. And there just is not that sort of money around at the present moment. We saw a clip in Philip's video of the last meeting of Basildon Council. And the gentleman at the front who stood up, he is the member for planning, the cabinet member for planning. Both he and the leader of the council at that meeting, in their comments, said, if this proposal goes ahead. Now, when you have the council leader saying if, there's a very good chance that it's not necessarily going to get the support of the councils. There's difficulties. Let's say Basildon goes against the development and Brentwood says they're going to go for it. We are in one difficult impasse. If we don't defeat this, we are going to see concrete from London to Southend. And I don't think any of us want to see that. And if we are to defeat this, then we need each and every one of you to put in as much and as strong an objection as you possibly can. There is a significant lot, but help us, because with your help, I think we can probably get this defeated. Thank you.
Sorry, so that's good there.
Not normally like this, just an action.
Okay, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Roger Hurst. I am the Brentwood Borough Councillor and I'm the Essex County Councillor for Brentwood Hutton, which is the division which includes the Brentwood side of this development. I think what the previous speaker said, I think must have resonance with us all. We need to get those objections in. I have to come clean and say that I do think that this development, the proposal, needed looking at. Why? Why do I say that? My division, Brentwood Hutton, has 80% of the greenfield sites for development in Brentwood in it that have been put forward in the current consultation. I therefore think that we need to actually look in detail at these things and work out what is feasible and what isn't feasible. I'm very sure that the vast majority of the green belt developments in my division are not feasible at all. We've heard a lot of talk about why not put other green belt developments elsewhere in the borough of Brentwood, and why not near a crossrail. It has to be said that there is a lot of brownfield which is being designated for development in Brentwood, which is near the crossrail terminus, and that's partly in my division as well. So there's going to be development. The beauty, if there was one, of looking at this site is simply that as a encapsulated garden suburb, there is at least capacity to look at capturing part of the development value, to reinvest in infrastructure, actually not allowing it to go ahead until we have adequate plans for road, for improvements to the rail, for schools, for medical facilities, etc. But I have to say as well that we have to listen. I mean, when we looked at the last iteration, and my friends from West Horn are up the back there, there was clearly a proposal which was going to swamp the village of West Hornby in new housing. That wasn't on, and it wasn't even going to be in a position to develop the right sort of infrastructure to go with it, I don't think. So we had to take on board the feedback from that. And I think we have to take on board the feedback from this. The more you look at it in detail, the more I come to the conclusion that actually the Greenbelt was a very good idea. The Greenbelt still is a very good idea. We need to keep it. I think most of us live in this sort of area because we like the suburban living that we have and the vast amounts of green countryside that are around it, and that's fantastic. We therefore need to find some sort of way of preserving it and actually seeing off the pressure from what's called objectively assessed need to develop more housing in the greenbelt areas of the southeast. And let's just bear in mind, anywhere which is in the borough of Brentwood, which is not already brownfield curtilage, urban curtilage, is greenbelt. There isn't a single piece of undeveloped greenfield site. It's not there. So, do we want to develop on the greenbelt or don't we? And I come increasingly down to think that actually I can't find anybody who does. I certainly don't. The question is, can we find a way of seeing it off? Well, all the advice that I've had, and I've been a Brentwood Borough Councillor for a few years, we were in control before the current coalition took over, we had the same advice that they had. No, you have to do it. You have to do it. There's going to have to be development on the greenbelt. Well, there's got to be some way of showing to the planning inspectorate that there is no very special circumstance. I can't speak for Basildon. I don't know Basildon well enough, but certainly Brentwood, and I can't imagine Basildon is that different. Certainly Brentwood, there is no very special circumstance which means we need to rip up our greenbelt. And therefore, we need to actually fight back very robustly. Encouraged to hear that there have been a couple of recent court cases where the High Court has upheld the interest of the greenbelt over development proposals which were put forward as very special need because of housing need. Given that that's recently happened, I think we probably have a slightly better hand to play than we had before. And I certainly will be putting in my own objection to the garden suburb the way it is at the moment. I know Tony and Colin at the back are going to be thinking he's changing his mind because the danger is, and I recognise the danger, that if we see, can I just finish off?
Yep, sure.
The danger is that if we don't support this, then it goes back to Plan A, which was an impossible amount of development round and about the village of West Horndon, which we know we don't want to see. So, how high risk a strategy is it to try and see off the overall development on the greenbelt at all? It's obviously a high risk, but actually I think it's worth the play. So let's get those objections in. Thank you.
introduce yourself, please.
Well, good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rodney Bass. I don't come from around here. I'm a member of the Cabinet of Essex County Council, but I would like to express the views on behalf of the Cabinet of Essex County Council to this proposal. Until my good friend and colleague Roger Hurst actually owned up to being a party to it, I was wondering why we were actually here, because everyone was disowning the actual creation of this particular consultation. But let me say this. Essex County Council is a consultee. We do take into account the views and advice of our professional officers, but we do as politicians and as a cabinet reach our own views, and we accept responsibility for those views. Essex County Council has a duty of cooperation with district councils over the developments and proposals in their local development plans. And we do help and try and assist in the creation of robust plans. We do not dictate what a district council should put in its plan, nor whether the housing should be at Blackmore or whether it should be here. What we try and do is assess the overall impact of the plan. And we are not a party to the Memorandum of Understanding which does exist between Basildon Council and Brentwood Council on this proposal. Because there is a Memorandum of Understanding, and you do need to know that. Our view is that we normally respond to a plan in terms of three main issues: the infrastructure needs of the proposals, the capacity of schools, and drainage issues. They seem to be the three main focuses of our observations. But in this case, there is a fourth, which is clearly encroachment of the Greenbelt. And let me just say this in relation to our three normal issues: highways infrastructure, schools capacity, and drainage. There really are very little details given in the plan. No assessments have been made. No transportation assessment has been made. And so we could not possibly support any such plan without those assessments having been made. But just to give you an illustration of something that I do know something about, we have written a plan about the A127, and we do know that the A127 is blocked every morning from Dunton to the M25. It stands to reason, therefore, that if you build 6,000 houses near the A127, you will simply grind it to a complete halt. So on those infrastructural terms alone, it's a non-runner. And there are issues related to schools. There is insufficient schools capacity for this number of houses. Certainly in the primary school area, there will be new primary schools required. It's not actually shown in detail, and the assessments have not been made. And actually, there's some very significant drainage and surface water alleviation systems that are required in any event in this particular area. But finally, in addition to those three normal things, there is this encroachment of the Greenbelt. Now, as a county council, I have to say, I'm a bit ambivalent, a bit like my colleague Roger Hurst on this. We do have to consider whether the Greenbelt ought to be breached in some situations, because otherwise we just could not do anything. As a country, I'm talking about. But I want to just say this about, and it is something slightly different to what the film drew out, which was very good, but I want to say this particular encroachment on the Greenbelt would, in our view, be fundamentally wrong, because it would lead to a coalescence of the main settlements. It would begin to lead to a coalescence of Basildon with Brentwood and with Thurrock. And we note that as a unitary authority, Thurrock has carried out an assessment of the Greenbelt and does, as far as I'm aware, object strongly to this particular proposal. Thurrock is a Labour-controlled authority. I'm unashamedly a Conservative in a strongly Conservative-controlled county council. Essex County Council and Thurrock Unitary Council agree.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Metcalfe. I'm the Member of Parliament for South Basildon and East Thurrock. So I'm actually out of patch tonight. This isn't in my constituency, and nor is the proposed development. But there is no doubt that this proposal will have a huge impact on my constituents, both in Langdon Hills, in the Basildon part of my constituency, but also those in Thurrock who use the A128. And I think we've had a fascinating range of views here this evening, including, obviously, Philip's fascinating film. And unfortunately, we have too many time constraints upon us to deal with perhaps some of the inaccuracies that I've heard this evening and some of the finer points around individual parties' housing policy. I think, needless to say, we all agree there is a problem with housing. But let's get back to what this is actually about. Why we are all given up a Thursday evening to sit here in James Hornsby School. And that is because there is a proposal on the table from Basildon and Brentwood to build 4,000 to 6,000 houses at Dunton Garden Suburb. Let's deal with that. Let's actually talk about that. So first, can I put on record my thanks to Derek and to Philip and to all the team who have created R.A.I.D for pulling this together so quickly. They've done it in really short notice. I think this is the 4th and final public meeting before the consultation closes, and I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job in getting the information out to those who will be affected. So on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for all your efforts. So let's cut to the chase. Let me make it quite clear straight off the bat, I oppose this development. No ifs, no buts. I think it is the wrong thing in the wrong place. Yes, we have a big housing problem. Yes, we need to tackle that, and we need to work together to do that. We all need to be involved. That's why groups like this are really important, because it brings up the debate about what we do to face up to our housing challenges. And what's fascinating is we're all saying, you know, the main parties, we need 200, we need 300,000 houses, but we definitely don't want them anywhere. We do have to tackle that. We've got to talk about it. It is a serious issue. We've heard some reasons perhaps why population growth is going up. My own example is when I was growing up, I had parents and a smattering of grandparents. Now, when kids are growing up, they tend to have most of their grandparents and a smattering of great-grandparents. And that, I think, demonstrates the problem. There are enough bedrooms in this country, there just aren't enough front doors. And that is the scale of the problem. That's why we've got to do something about it. But let's get back to Dunton. We've heard all the reasons. We've heard the pressure it will put on the A127. We've heard the issue around schools. We know there is a problem with getting enough GPs and healthcare into the area. We know, actually, when large housing developments like this are built, there is pressure put on things like sewage, on power, on water pressures. All these things can be explored. But let's just be clear. This is the wrong development. It cannot possibly go ahead. And I'm confident that when those who will determine whether or not to take this to the next step, and just remember, this is a planning consultation, it's not a planning application. When the councillors on Brentwood and on Basildon look at this, hear the views that you will have all expressed so clearly through the consultation, I think that they will decide they too have made the wrong decision. And it will disappear. It will be put to one side as something that was an interesting exercise. And my final few words on this is, the sooner they do that, the better, as far as I am concerned. This proposal has created a degree of blight upon the site around those houses that are already there in Dunton Village and will be affected by it. So the sooner, my message to those who will do it on Brentwood and Basildon, please get on with this once the consultation closes on Monday and come to the right decision. And my final point is to everyone on this panel and everyone out there, do not politicise this issue. If we politicise it, party lines will be drawn, battle lines will be set up, and we will start fighting amongst ourselves as opposed to fighting the proposal. And what we really want to do is fight this proposal and put it where it rightly belongs, bang in the bin. That's what we've got to do. If we start trying to argue the politics of it, we'll get distracted and we'll lose sight of our real goal. I hope that's clear that I oppose this, and that if we all work together, the right outcome will be delivered for all of us, in my view. Thank you very much.
One of the reasons that Philip and I are meeting with Councillor Moore and Turner tomorrow is to echo what Stephen just said. In this situation, it's a bit of a confrontation, but we don't want that ongoing. What we want to do, as I said earlier, we want to get ahead of the game. We want to work with the council to understand what can be done. Yes, we do need houses. I live in a house. Why should I deny anybody else that right? But they've got to be the right number, in the right place, for the right people. And I don't think Dunton Garden Suburb passes any of those three tests. Anyway, we will move on to some questions. One from, because these come in through Facebook, I was asking for questions to be read out here. A gentleman called Simon. In the Dunton Garden Suburb consultation, there is a suggestion there could, I mean there's lots of could, be a new railway station between Langdon and West Holden. However, when I wrote to C2C about this, the reply I received was, from C2C, I can confirm there are no plans to build a new train station between Langdon and West Holden. That's not a question, that's just a statement. But if anyone wants to challenge that, if anyone has inquired through C2C, perfectly welcome to. So let's just kick the new station into touch.
Sorry, can I just make a point?
Yeah.
A lot of people have been talking about infrastructure tonight, and I think that's an absolutely crucial point. I think everybody...
On the stage, please, so we can hear you.
Yep. Sorry, just spoke a bit, but a lot of people have been talking about infrastructure. I don't think anybody here would be proposing anything at all if infrastructure is not a part of it. One of the things, I think it was Councillor Hurst made the point, one of the things that happens with a big development, and I appreciate that a big development is bad if you're against it and if you live in the area, but if you have a big development, you have much better chance of getting the infrastructure coming in. If you have bits and pieces, small piecemeal developments, infrastructure is not one of the things that you can get done. One of the things that I would also just like to say is, on the Brentwood Council side, we've got another full council meeting before we get to the PERDA process, before we all have to stop in April. We are going to be sending a letter, Brentwood Council is going to be sending a letter to central government, and what that precisely says is, it hasn't been finalised yet, I'm still effectively writing it with officers, but we are going to be saying the local plan process is a process we're trying to follow. We're trying to do it right, we're trying to do what we're told in terms of all the objectively assessed needs stuff, but that doesn't mean we accept the process and we don't agree with the objectively assessed need. We want to send a message to central government. The way this is going on, the way you're forcing us to go through the local plan process is not an acceptable process. We're trying to be responsible about it. You're putting pressure on us to do impossible things. In Brentwood, 89% green belt, and you're being asked for 5,500 houses. In Basildon, I haven't actually heard the figure tonight, but anybody's stressing it very much. The Basildon figure is, your council in Basildon is supposed to be trying to find spaces for 16,000 houses. Now, the question that everybody here who's been very vocal against this, and I completely appreciate why, has got to answer is, if we don't want to get taken to court, if Basildon don't want to get taken to court, if Brentwood don't want to get taken to court in terms of the objectively assessed need process, by a big house builder who says, oh, I want to build on this green field here, try and stop me. If we don't want to get taken to court, we need to be able to say where those houses are going to be built. Where are they going to be built? Okay. Basildon's got to find somewhere, Brentwood's got to find somewhere.
What we would like, though, is accurate numbers. As stated by a Billericay Action Group last October, the OAM was incorrect. It used the wrong base data. So obviously, if you use the wrong base data, you get the wrong numbers out the other end. Questions from the floor, please.
I think it's a fundamental problem there, and I'm sorry, I know it constrains people's different political views, and I know we're supposed to be staying away from that, but we've got to provide this number of houses. That's the whole point. The country's full up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. That's why we're standing saying,
300,000 a year.
Can I just answer that?
How far are we going to go with this, folks?
You are right. You are completely right. The country we are a small island. But what we're ducking away from is if you look at the census, 2011 census figures, these are not people coming into Basildon. This is our own growth.
300,000 a year?
That's
And all
across the
of a sudden we're
whole
talking about
country.
the government
No,
saying
I'm not trying to get into
300,000
I don't want to get into a debate about the...
Spooky coincidence that, I'm sorry, but...
No, because what I'm saying... No, okay, we could do that. We could completely say it's all down to migration. We are full, let's not build any more houses. The reality, though, is how many people know of people who cannot find a home, who are having to move out of the area because there is not enough capacity. Someone talked about we need to build more affordable homes. Yes, we do, but we need to build all sorts of homes. What makes homes so expensive is the fact there is a supply and demand issue. And it's not migrants coming into the UK who are buying up the homes, it's ourselves. There is not enough housing stock. We've had a 7-10 year recession. We haven't been building houses at the rate we have since the war. We've got to get back to that. So what I'm saying is that doesn't say that this is the right proposal, but we do have to find a way of balancing what our own needs are and agreeing that. We can just dismiss it. But then the problem that we all know we actually have gets worse and worse and worse. And that isn't migration. That's people ageing. Everyone is ageing by 5 years every 10 years. And we don't know when that will stop. So we've got to come up with a solution that works for both of us, and it's the balance. So that's what we've got to work together, because if we just keep saying no, the problem for all of us gets worse.
How about stopping family allowance so people have less kids, and then we balance it out both ends that way, don't we?
I think there's a lot of merit in that, but that isn't actually the biggest problem. It's not the biggest problem. Actually, the biggest problem is my mum, who lives in has a house with too many bedrooms in it for her. But that's because we've all moved out.
Right, a quick response from Byron to that last question, then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with what Stephen said about immigration. It's not the biggest issue. You have to live here for 7 years before you're eligible for a council house in this town, and we've still got 3,000 people on the waiting list, and it was cut in half when they increased the threshold to 7 years. The real problem you've got is that we live in the South East, and our whole economy in the UK is based around London, and the employment market around London. If you go to Stoke-on-Trent, the council will sell you a house for £1. That's the real problem, is that everyone is trying to live in the South East, and what we need is an economy that looks a little bit different, and that's what the Labour Party is trying to
Isn't
do.
part of the problem that the London boroughs are paying people thousands of pounds to move out of them? Yes, that's true. Into Basildon and places like that.
That's part of the problem, yeah. And that's because that is because they are socially cleansing sections.
Yeah, they're not people that come from Basildon.
That's why we moved out of East London, because we moved to this area to get away from that problem. So migration into London has the effect of pushing people like us out into the suburbs. So we impact on your housing problem or our housing problem in this area now because of immigration into central London.
Okay, lady on the end there, did you?
In effect, you got the rich people from...
Fascinated to know what that statistic is for Basildon. With regards to migration, most of us have come from London to live in Brentwood, to live in Basildon. But the migration is an issue because lots of people are moving into London.
Okay, quick one, Jeff.
Interesting point that you raised, because a few years ago, local estate agents did a survey. The majority of people moving into aspirational housing in Basildon were coming, guess where from? Southend. Southend can be areas. You know, dispel this myth about the red herring of immigration. The wrong track.
80% of Brentwood's growth is going to be the reality.
Yes, sir, next question.
From the Brentwood Gazette, this is a question for Mike. I'm just wondering, Mike, because you're part of the administration of Brentwood Council, if you're so opposed to there's two or three questions.
Wrap it all up in one.
If you're so opposed to the development, Mike, or a member of the administration, which must have signed this off somewhere, some of the administration must have allowed the officers to go ahead with this. Why haven't you stepped down?
Why would I step down? Because the process that's been going through is exactly the right process that should be, as Councillor Minor and other people have said tonight. The process is that you have to put every area that's up for potential development, and it's a bit of land that people will want to.
But the Garden Suburb consultation would have been signed off by a council before it.
Sure, but Piers, it is a consultation. This is a process that we have to go to. If you want to take something off of the table, you have to put it on the table first. That's the process we're currently going through. So the process is correct. We do oppose the the potential application, but we've got to go through this process, Piers. It's not a matter of people signing a memorandum of understanding because they want it, because we don't want it. We don't want further.
Your accord, Mike, has signed this off.
We've signed off for a consultation and a memorandum of understanding which allows Brentwood and Basildon
I think Mike has answered that question. Rodney Bass, could you? No, sorry, sir. Sorry. We might come back to you if time's available.
Can I just make an observation about this process of the local development plan? Because that was what your question, I think, was part of it.
question is,
hang on. Just let me make a point, and that is this: that normally, in our experience in Essex County Council, in dealing with districts and borough councils' local development plans, is that we've normally had some preliminary discussions about the implications of infrastructure, of schools, of doctors, of all the other things that the housing is going to produce. I have to say, in this instance, we haven't really had that discussion, and therefore there is no data. It's a kind of meaningless consultation, because it's so obviously not been assessed. And that is one of the points that I was actually trying to make. And I don't think, with respect, that Brentwood Council, which was the council which sought this off Basildon, I'm not taking sides between Basildon and Brentwood, believe you me. I think we have to have discussions with both of them. But it was Brentwood that actually solicited this idea on their side of the border, if you like, to join us. And that needs to be properly assessed.
Can he respond? He's shaking his head that way.
Well,
right, okay.
He actually talked about Uttlesford. I'll tell you about Uttlesford. We actually told Uttlesford that part of their plan was simply not viable because of its infrastructural deficit. And that is partly why Uttlesford plan did not succeed. So, it's very interesting to hear the point about the number of houses. It wasn't just simply the number of houses, it was that the infrastructure was not there to go with them.
Okay, sorry. This raises, that very point raises a question from the email from Pandora of Langdon Hills, addressed to the Brentwood councillors. How would you answer the challenge that the Dunton Garden Suburb is simply a safe way for Brentwood to dump all its social problems in terms of high-density housing and gypsy quota south of the A127, while benefiting from the council tax and keeping their own political seats safe? Any response to that? Brief one, please.
It's coming.
The thing that you've got to remember is the first proposal for building in the area that we're talking about, which is a cross-border area, came from Basildon Council. It was in the Basildon local plan document which came out last year. Unfortunately, the attention that's now getting wasn't on it then. That's unfortunate. People didn't pick up on it. That's the reality. I'm sure there were people who responded to it.
Yes, it was.
But it was there. It was in the Basildon document.
It stopped at the
Yes, exactly. Because.
It didn't go over.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just explain.
And that's where your cunning plane comes from.
If you just let me explain.
No, that's the answer.
If you just let me give you the facts. Please. The answer is that at that point on the Brentwood side, the proposal was to build this kind of level of housing immediately around the West Taunton village. We've got a couple of West Taunton parish councils here. That would have more than doubled in size West Taunton village. So as you can understand, those of you who this is about building next to or close to, West Taunton village were not at all happy about having their community more than doubled in size overnight after any proper consultation. Now, so what happened then was West Taunton were up in arms. They responded. That was the preferred options consultation for Brentwood. This was under the previous administration. So those were preferred options. Those were the options the Brentwood Council was preferring. The negative response from West Taunton said to Brentwood, that's not acceptable, we've got to find somewhere else. And because Basildon were proposing this area, Brentwood said, I'll tell you what, we can put our area next to your area. Yeah. And if you put the two together, you get better infrastructure more
We'll
doctors'
get no
surgeries, better
infrastructure.
schools,
Right.
better road
And
connections.
Brentwood doesn't get any of the rubbish that Brentwood
Okay,
comes towards.
right.
I mean, what West Horsham were objecting to was Area 37 being developed, which is green belt. They were understanding what the brownfield site was about. In fact, quite recently, they've said, yeah, okay, fine. Someone from West Horsham, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, okay. We accept the fact on 20 and 21, as I believe it was, areas. Then yes, that is redevelopment. It's brownfield site. We understand that, and with sympathetic building in line with what else is in West Horsham, we believe that we can take 350 houses. But Area 37, we don't want because it's green belt. Quite right too.
Okay, next question from the floor, please.
Yeah, excuse me, could somebody update me on what the situation is on Dry Street? It was touched upon. What is the exact position now on Dry Street?
Do you want to answer that question?
That's 750 houses.
Yeah,
under.
Danny's been a campaigner in the Dry Street.
Well,
So
I've been, let's just say, campaigning since 1998,
suppose, yeah.
if you could, as Jeff has been, and Jeff and I, and of course we're in different political parties, but we work very well together on a non-political basis on this thing.
I just wanted to check what you were saying.
Oh, right. Oh, that's well, honestly, you're crazy. So, what I would say is that we lost the planning at Basildon Council, which is in June 2013. We've had several attempts to get a High Court hearing, a judicial review, and unfortunately we failed, and we failed on the appeals. We've now got a situation where there's nothing legally to stop the development going ahead. However,
I'm going to interrupt you there because Danny's not quite up to speed. We are appealing to the High Courts for the proceedings to be reopened. This is on legal advice and on the strength of our argument that the appeal will be reopened at the High Courts. So that's the stage that we're at now.
well, that's a recent development.
Sorry?
That is recent.
But at this moment, we're looking at 750 houses going on very good farmland.
It's arable farmland. Are they allowed to do that?
No, slow down. It's 750 houses on land which has not, and this is part of the point. It's never been developed even for farming. It's only ever been pastures. That's why its official denomination is Dry Street Pastures. It's never been ploughed, and that's the richness of it. It's never been developed.
Who owns the land that can just leave it fallow?
Beg pardon?
Who owns the land who can just leave it fallow?
The Homes and Communities Agency, the government. We own the land, but we can't do anything about it.
Okay, next question, please. Jeff, very quick one, please.
Well, first of
I'm
all,
keeping my eye on the clock. We're overrunning.
well, yeah, I will be as quick as I can.
Please.
First of all, Councillor Aspinall, leader of Brentford Council, he said basically because they lost West Horsham and lost a councillor, that was a silly idea, we won't go down that road, and they don't think they'll lose a councillor by over this side. Phil Baker said we could basically dump it on the other side on the Essex radio because no one realises we own it. But more importantly, which I want to bring to everybody's attention, is Basildon's reports by LUC and Brentford's reports by URS. Now, there are total inaccuracies in this report because I wrote under the Information of Freedom Act to Basildon Council, which I'm waiting a reply, and Brentford, which I've got, which basically says, if you want to know how we made the decision, look it up yourself, and here's the details how you look it up on the website. But the first thing I looked up was air quality, and perhaps the planning person here can say. Air quality. Right, Pilgrim's Hatch is supposed to be very bad, but if you look at the A127, the last time they checked it out was in 2003, which was as much or worse than at Pilgrim's Hatch. But Pilgrim's Hatch is selective because it depends what area of Pilgrim's Hatch you look at. Some areas are very good at Pilgrim's Hatch, others aren't so. But
Jeff, you have to wind up, please.
When you look at the report, basically, everything it says, there's so much in the reports that's wrong and is a sham. So perhaps the Deputy of the Planning Office would like to comment on that point because I've been looking up the details and how they come to these results in these papers leaves a lot to be desired.
Is there a response? A quick one?
We've heard.
Could you come to the front of the stage, please?
There's been things tonight which are completely accurate. Like I say, I think the film, there's a lot of good stuff in the film. There's also been stuff said which is inaccurate. As one of the gentlemen over here said, the trouble is we haven't got enough time to go through and say which are the accurate things and which are the inaccurate.
I'm prepared to stay.
What about your report? I'm asking about your report. You stand by this report as being accurate?
It's not my personal report.
Oh, sorry, my apologies to you. My apologies. All I'm going on is basically in this report, I've only looked up a couple of items as requested, well, as from the information from your council, and so far they're total rubbish. Because how can you compare 2003 figures was 41 to 50 on the A127, right? At Pilgrim's Hatch, well, near Pilgrim's Hatch, because Pilgrim's Hatch was just about the same. But when you get to the vicinity of the A12, which is obviously completely different.
Well,
Jeff, I'm not hearing a question. This is question time.
Is, how can you compare like with like? Because basically, in your report, in the reports here, the information you gave URS, you're not comparing like with like. You haven't got the same basis.
I think it's worth. I do think it's worth saying both for Basildon and for Brentwood, the local plan is out of date. So our Brentwood local plan, the current local plan, was written in 2005. We're at the moment in the process of coming up with a new local plan. So the council has to get various bits of documentation produced. So you do get, whilst you're still in the process, you get things which are out of date in the documentation, and you'll only get everything finally up to date once you get to the final end of the local plan.
But this is 2015. This is January.
Well, this is now, but there's going to be documents that have come out with. I mean, I was looking at one this afternoon. There's documents that come out and are still referring to old documents, which are saying, and it says within it, we accept there's new information which we still haven't got, and which we will need to incorporate, but we haven't got it yet. So
okay,
it's an
I think we
evolving
have to
process.
call that one to a close. Piers,
Yeah,
your second.
this is to the floor, just one more. This is what I was going to ask before. Brentwood Council is going to have a £3 million shortfall.
Can you speak up, please? I can't hear you.
Sorry, Brentwood Borough Council is going to be looking at a £3 million shortfall between now and I think 2019, four-year period, because of the way the government grants to councils is reduced, which is meant to be made up by new homes bonuses. So it's probably better to you, Mike, again, because you're the only member of the administration that's opposed to this. Where is Borough Council going to find £3 million between now and 2018-2019? It doesn't build the right number of houses.
I don't know if I'm the only one who's opposed to it, for sure. I think, well, let me answer your question like this. Stephen was absolutely right tonight about not letting party politics get in the way of this and people fighting over who's going to build 200, who's going to build 300. That is not the issue. And I'll also extend that to saying this is not, or this should not be a fight between Brentwood and Basildon. Brentwood and Basildon have come together to look at this. It sounds very much like Brentwood and Basildon want to get shot of it as soon as possible. It's not the right thing, but we're going to put it on the table, as I said, because that's what we've got to do. I'm hearing a little, you know, I'm sort of seeing the front page of the Brentwood Gazette next week. Brentwood versus Basildon. It's not what Piers is.
Mike, I'm asking where you can find £3 million from.
It's not what we want to do, Piers. We want to work together. I want to work with everybody in this room.
A simple question. Where are you going to find £3 million, which is going to be the shortfall in the new home bonuses if you don't build the right number of houses?
Piers, that is not relevant to it. We're talking about Dunton Garden Suburb.
Please
do not polarise this argument.
Okay, Mike,
it's
we'll
not an argument
take
to
the
be
next.
polarised.
Thank you very much. Max.
Just one question. How many of the councillors on the top table have verified the URS and land reports to see for accuracy?
Can I go back to that? As a Brentwood councillor, I would say that having looked at it, I have big question marks over its accuracy.
In terms of the A127, I think, as you mentioned earlier on, there is quite an up-to-date report which we have undertaken with Southend Borough Council to measure the impact of the entire stretch of the A127, and that does include references to the other gentleman's questions. So that is a more up-to-date picture. But I have to say, in defence of the Brentwood Borough Council and the planner, these things do work with different timescales. That's how plans are put together. And you can't always get it right up to date. But if you want some arguments on the transportation side, look at the way A127 document. There is a new joint document which has been drawn up between Essex County Council and Southend.
I would support that and recommend that you do read that. It's actually up on our website in the files section, and I was going to reference that. I've actually read that document, Councillor Bass. It's excellent. It's about 67 pages long. That's the type of research you have to do to get your facts. Just one bullet point out that it was released in March 2014. The detail on it must have taken a year to produce, I would say. So the data, yeah, would have been, it's now 2 years out of date. But it says to make the necessary maintenance on the A127, which is 20 years past its lifespan, from what its original intention is, it would be £76 million. That doesn't include any widening. Thank God, we don't want a 3-lane highway in both directions. And you have no knowledge of Dunton Garden Suburbs. That's the type of infrastructure, just one item. And when people say to me, naively, oh, well, of course, if we get this development, we'll have to get the infrastructure. I will put my presentation up on our website, because it actually goes into potential costs and kind of things that will concern you. But in the, the understanding that people have got to get home, I'm going to release class early tonight, but only over on the bit. Last couple of questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
Apologies, we've got to
Okay,
go. Can I take a sticker?
Yeah, please do. Please take posters, stickers, whatever. Spread the message. My wife wants to get me out of our conservatory. Yes.
What are the proposed number of pitches for the traveller site?
Good question. Never seen it.
What
What are the proposed number of pitches for the traveller site? Anyone want to answer that?
I'll have a pop at that.
Please, Gary.
We don't know the numbers, but the problem is, as you've seen at the situation at Crays Hill, the local primary school, which was fairly reasonable before the Dale Firm travellers turned up, has now been turned into a creche, where one day you might have 30 pupils, the next day you might have only 6. And this hasn't been calculated into the plans. There's talk of possibly a new primary school, but the problem is, I can see that primary school struggling, as Crays Hill Primary School struggled, and who in their right mind would go down the bank, just picture it, newly married couple, you've saved up for your deposit, you've got a loan from the bank, you both work, are you going to buy an house next to a traveller site, one here and thereabouts? And without shrieking the wrath of Councillor Bass, what if there's park night lighting on the new estate? Would you buy an house near a traveller site? I wouldn't, with respect.
The operative word being travellers. Why do we have to provide permanent pitches? Surely they travel.
Well, we shouldn't do.
Exactly.
Their namesake, I mean, I'm quarter Irish, my family comes from Ireland, and there the police do the job. They don't take no rubbish off them, they break the law, they're punished. In this country, we pander to them, bend over backwards. And
It's just the word. We have to call them travellers, and I don't know why we have to provide permanent pitches for people who travel.
Okay, thank you, Gary. But so the answer to that is there isn't an answer. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Right, there's a question from the floor, please.
Hi, I'm from the Echo. I'd like to open it to the floor. We keep talking about infrastructure. Is there any actual way of securing this before the development to get the roads up to scratch before the work starts? Because I've never seen it done. I don't pretend to be an expert, but generally they seem to come afterwards with the Section 106 agreements. Do you actually have any power to get this done beforehand, before the A127?
The problem with it is, if I may just help you, the problem is that if you build affordable housing, that actually is part of the provision of the infrastructure. And it actually weakens your ability to then do things like roads. I mean, there's only a certain amount you can extract out of new development opportunities. That is what all councils have to face when they're doing their local development plans. it was, as I think the gentleman from Brentwood was explaining, it's a very delicate and difficult balancing act. On the one hand, as Stephen has said, we actually need to change the nature of the housing provision because people are living, in smaller family units and they need smaller accommodations. But on the other hand, if you do that, you're intensifying a development which doesn't then give and bring money to spend on the infrastructure, and it is a very difficult balancing act. I can tell you for highways, you need £20,000 per unit taxed effectively out of the development gain in order to do a half-decent job on the infrastructure. Now, if you can get that if you build maybe, big 5-bedroom executive houses, but that doesn't actually do your housing need much good. So it is a very difficult act for councils to get right. And all I can say is we do our best, actually, regardless of party politics, to get that balance right.
If by infrastructure you also mean things like doctor surgeries, schools, A127, street lighting, put it this way, 17 years ago I led a campaign to get a secondary school in Langdon Hills. I proved to the LEA officers, they said you can't justify the numbers. I didn't use rumour or gossip, I got accurate information from all the head teachers, and Great Barrier, Lindswood and Merrylands every year, projecting 7 years plus, had a full school. 17 years later, we still don't have that school. So forget about what infrastructure we need for this development. We still, the answer is not in our lifetime.
Derek, can I just add to that? Thank you.
We're going to bring this to a close because people are getting restless and we are massively overrunning.
It's a very good point you've raised about which order infrastructure or homes should come in. And one of my main concerns around this whole proposal is its sustainability. Because actually it's probably if it were to go ahead, if the planning consultation were to be adopted and then we would start to develop plans, it would probably develop over 20 years. That would be something like 250 to 500 homes a year. Now that's a slow burn. And the danger is you get to the point where you've built 1,000 or 1,500, 6, 7 years into the project and discover that actually the numbers you based the whole project on have changed and switched around. And you end up with isolated built communities without the infrastructure in place to support them. Because, as we've heard, you need to build the properties out to actually get the money in to do the primary schools. No, unless you were talking on something at much bigger scale, you would never get the infrastructure first. I think there are so many things wrong with this proposal on the scale that's being devised. And I'm sure you've heard of them all. I had a whole list to go through, but time was against us. My final word to you is just make sure you've had your say on this and that everyone you know has taken part in the consultation. The officers are going to read them and they will listen to you because I haven't yet to hear an argument that doesn't make sense why people are opposing this. And so if you make that argument as strongly as you possibly can, I think this will be dropped. Doesn't mean we've solved the problem, but this massive development will be dropped.
Can I just ask?
No one wants to go home tonight. Okay, fine.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, where does the problem then go, except that we're all living too long, we're all too fertile, where does it actually go?
Brentwood.
Right.
Well, the answer is that's a conversation for another day.
It is. It is.
Excuse me, I just want to know, when will we all know if this is going to be agreed or not agreed? When are we likely to know that?
The bit that I know about that, because I've asked the planning officers, 5 p.m. Monday is the cut-off date. Then they've got to look at all the responses, be they email, letters, and some are duplicate. Some, regrettably, won't be valid objections. Some will be very. But, they have to sift out all the duplicates. With the elections, and that's a lot of work for the councils, that coming up, we won't hear anything until after the elections.
Derek, can I suggest that you might have a greater insight after our meeting tomorrow with Basildon Council?
Okay, excellent. All right.
Tell you what, on my way out tonight, I picked up the recorder take it as a question, do you really think we're going to win this? And I just caught the headline right on the front page. In Mandeville Way, which has got big notices saying conservation area, quite a few trees with tree preservation orders on it. An application that was originally put in 2008 and has now been passed for a couple of dozen houses in that part of Mandeville Way, the conservation area. I think that's the thin end of the wedge. We can do 2 dozen. Let's put 400 here until we get.
It's a very valid point, and that is one of the reasons that Philip and I are meeting with Basildon councillors to get, as I said, I keep saying, ahead of the game so that we know about all developments, however big or small or whatever.
Yeah, see, I think if they say 20, fine, do 200 there until we get to this 6,000.
Right. Paul, very last question.
Just bear in mind, guys, there is an election coming up. I'd love to know what will be said after the election, wherever the politics are. Just one thing about Section 106 agreements. Councils nationally are run roughshod by developers with their armies of lawyers and consultants. And what was originally negotiated, sometimes they'll get considerably less. One of my main concerns is I'm a little bit out of date, I'm not in the game anymore, but there's this thing called viability. Now, with social housing, I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, there are spatial standards. There are standards of build. With private housing, this is what it was like 2 or 3 years ago. You had shoddily built shoeboxes sold off of plan en masse to foreign investors. Right? How can you get? No, I've got plenty of evidence for this. How can we guarantee that Section 106 will be honoured to the full, and that good spatial standards will be supplied for decent built homes in the private sector?
I will quickly answer that, and I think that is an excellent point, and it's one of those things that we've got to make sure that we keep for the battle ahead. I don't think we're going to get to that point. I think that this will, as a consultation, will end. But if it does go to the next stage, those are the sort of arguments that we need to be corralling, ready to fight the next battle. But let's fight one battle at a time. The first one is to make sure people understand your position to the concept, let alone the detail.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to a close now. Before you all disappear, I'm in this for the long run. As Stephen said, we've got this meeting tomorrow. Philip is with me. I hope we're carrying everyone with us. I'd like to thank our distinguished guests for turning up this evening, giving their busy time, taking a lot of And I'd like to thank everyone for their support, be it through our Facebook group or attending here tonight. Thank you.